Welcome to The Fix, the show that sheds light on addiction in our community and how we can create awareness for addiction recovery. I'm your host, Brock Bevell. Today's topic is what happens when recovery does not work and coping with the loss of a loved one. My guest for today is Heather O'Donnell and Tina Savage. Thanks for coming back, Tina.
Thank you for letting me come back.
I know you were here, but I think this is a very important moment for you to be here, help us shed some light. As I said before, that we're gonna talk about what happens when recovery doesn't work. We're gonna kind of go back a couple years, but I know that the feelings our emotions are still on our sleeves. I know our emotions are still kind of high. We had a chance to talk a little bit before this, and I know there's going to be some emotions, but I really feel like the community needs to hear about this. First of all, thanks for coming in, Heather, as well, for traveling the miles to be here and devoting your time. It's pretty cool. Just to start, we're going to talk a little bit about Jared. Jared is no longer here with us, but I met Jared in March of 2016. He came to our program. He was brought in kind of a roundabout way. He showed up at our doorstep kind of like an alley cat and showed up, and he was broken. He was desperate. He was thin. He told us that he had an addiction that he had developed in Safford, and so he just needed help. So what I like to do is I know that you knew him at the end of his addiction. You were his best friend, just so I can kind of shed that light. And Heather, you were the fiance to Jared. So if you wouldn't mind, can you give me just a little background of what your recollection of Jared was?
Oh my gosh, I met him right before he graduated, and then I started playing softball with him. And we called him the T-Rex because he always threw with his arms like this. He was just goofy. He was just full of life, and I didn't think I'd have a relationship with him, and we just became brother and sister. We talked all the time. He sent me Bible verses when he was struggling. I called him. You know, it was weird. If I had a bad day, he knew it, and he called me or texted me, "Hey sis, what's up? I feel like you're having a bad day." It was a crazy bond, but it was pretty intense. It was like a brother and sister.
Yeah. How about you? How much after the program did you meet him?
I met him in August of 16.
Okay.
So we met on an online dating site in
from Shello, so it does work.
Yeah,
okay.
It does. I was living in Globe at the time. He was living up here, and we met. And like she said, he had this great personality, and he was fun and funny, and he just had this drive for life that was new for him. He was recovering. He was clean for the first time, apparently, in many years, and he was excited to share God, and he just had this excitement about life and everything, and just drew people to him.
So you started dating him, and then I know eventually you moved up here, brought your family.
Yep.
How many children?
3.
3 children followed you coming up. And so what attracted you to Jared? I know what attracted me to Jared, and I think all of us feel like we were best friends with this guy.
Right.
Like he just had that personality, and it was captivating. The best part about Jared was his beard. I was always offended.
It was always perfect.
His beard was so much better than mine. We do this beard rub thing. It was kind of weird, but it was personal. This relationship that each one of us individually had with them. If you don't mind me asking, so what brought you up here? What attracted you, first of all, to change your life, to move up here and to be involved with him?
Well, I think who he was as a person at that time. He was really involved with you guys, and he loved his friends. He loved his new life. He loved God. He was in church all the time, and that was really important to me. And so he brought me into the church. We've had Pastor Ernie here, and he was like a breath of fresh air, because he was just so happy and pumped and willing to help everybody. And I didn't have that in Globe, and I was going through my own stuff there. So I'm like, gosh, this is nice. I love it up here. Everything about the energy of people and who he was to my kids at that time. I was just ready to, start a new life.
What's crazy is I'm hearing all the things that we teach about, like developing a connection with people. So we had, outside of Blue Vase, he had you, and so he had your involvement with softball, your involvement with the church, right? The new relationship. So he was doing all these things that we teach about on how to stay sober. At what point in time did you start noticing or seeing red flags, either one of you?
Well, I remember meeting Heather at our softball game. Do you remember that?
Did you like each other when you first met?
I was like, who's that
Okay,
blonde with
okay.
Jared now? Who's that? He was like, you're going to love her. She's great. We spent Thanksgiving together,
Okay.
all of us. It was like we were a family. We watched the kids sometimes. It was awesome. Like, like it's been 2 years and now I'm like missing him. But she was always at the softball games. The kids were always there rooting him on, and he played softball not that great.
It wasn't very good.
It was okay. We were in a tournament together, and we actually, Jared and I won sportsmanships for that tournament. So we had matching sweatshirts, and when he passed away, I took his and I gave him mine.
Okay.
But that was my first red flag, is he stopped playing softball.
Okay. How about you?
I think probably drinking. I noticed that a change in that when he started drinking. It turned into, it was just something like that was very short, that we might do every once in a while, to something that he did on a regular basis, to where he wouldn't even come home sometimes. He'd rather be drinking with some friends.
Okay. Kind of a personal question. Was there a different Jared during the day and then a different Jared at night?
Absolutely. Yeah, who he was during the day, from the time he was at work and at church and friends and stuff, he was still peppy, and he was all about helping people, and he was friends, and he was great at his job, and he was everything. But at home, he was angry, and he wanted to drink, and he didn't want to hang out with people. He didn't want to have those relationships, that he did. It's like he pretended to be someone completely different from the time he was at home. And I struggled with that.
Okay. Did you guys ever talk about it? Did you have conversations?
We did sometimes, but I think I was always afraid to push him, because if he got too angry, he'd just be like, oh, whatever, and he would want to leave. So I didn't want to cause a fight, so I kind of let it be.
Did he blame it on his addiction? Like, hey, I'm an addict. Did he try to use that as a coping mechanism, or what was his reasoning?
Yeah, sometimes he did. He would just say, this is what I was used to, and I went through this in my life. And growing up, he had a really tough childhood, and the stuff he dealt with his parents, and he was beat, and all kinds of stuff. So he blamed a lot of it on just what he was used to in his life compared to what was going on right now. So I'm just trying to be compassionate towards that, and I didn't want to. I'm like, I don't know, I didn't deal with that, so I didn't want to push the envelope for him sometimes.
Was there some personnel, because I really want to educate the community, because from the outsider looking in, Jared was a perfect recovering addict. You know what I'm saying? He was happy, he was grasping all the concepts, he was implementing them, he was going to church every Sunday. I know he was in the Bible, he was trying to work towards pastoral leadership. I know all these, and he had a great people around him, but he also had this other side of him that a lot of us, we didn't see. Right. I remember one night he called me and said, hey, I'm really struggling with alcohol. So we kind of talked through it, but what he was doing, he was masking that problem and wouldn't tell anybody else that he was using meth as well on the side. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so he wanted to give me bits and pieces of information that he thought that I could help him with, but he didn't want to be completely rigorously honest with the people that he loved. What other red flags were you seeing as someone involved in the relationship with him that you could maybe help other wives and girlfriends and anybody that has a family member struggling?
I think I noticed that he, the anger, just random bursts of anger and not wanting to be home. He normally, at first he was so involved in our family. He loved my kids and wanted to be a part of their life, and he just, he called them his kids, and it got to a point where he didn't want to do those things, or he'd rather be, I'm going to go hang out with my friends, and he wouldn't come home when he said he would. Hiding his phone, he would always be on his phone, and he would put it upside down, which he never used to do that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm not a nosy person, but I would always notice it was hidden to the side and upside down, and if I would ask him about it, he would get defensive real easily. So just little things I'm like, that's not normal. So for a while I was like, maybe he's cheated on me. We had those conversations, and he's like, no, never, I would never do that, I love you. I'm like, something's not weird, but I never thought that he would have been doing drugs again. How
about his performance at work? You've talked about kind of the performance in the home a little bit, disconnecting, some anger, but how about work?
Honestly, I didn't know too much about it. I thought work was going great for him. I think he really hid a lot from me, so I didn't really know that he wasn't showing up for work sometimes. I think he said that if he wasn't at work, well, we weren't too busy that day, so they just had me do this instead, or I'm really unhappy. He decided he was going to start a new business.
Yes.
And I was like, well, if that's what you want to do, let's do it. What do we need to do? Like, but I thought you loved your job. I'm just getting really stressed out about it, and I don't want to do that anymore. Little did I know, they were noticing stuff about him, and it just wasn't working out. But he just really hid and lied to me about those, and decided to venture off on a whole new path when I thought he was super happy with what he had.
So what advice, so you're seeing this at work, hearing a little bit about it. What advice could you give the community, the people that are really struggling with this, and how involved should we get?
I would, if I could go back, knowing that he was a past addict, and stepping into that and noticing who he was, and just seeing little changes, just realizing that it's not you making stuff up. The chances are that there is something going on, and being comfortable enough to talk to that person about it, or I wish I would have brought it up to you guys that, hey, something's not right here, that you guys could have stepped in and talked to him more instead of just blowing it off. I just thought he was super stressed, and I don't know. I would say just definitely.
But I think we saw the red signs too, or the red flags, and thought, well, maybe he is just stressed out, because he told me the struggles he was having, and the last thing he said to me is, "I promise I'm okay, sis. I love you." And I knew that it wasn't right, that he wasn't okay, and I wish I would have pushed it more.
That's interesting you said, because he came to me and he would feed me a little bit of information, and then he would feed you information, feed you, and I feel as addicts that's how we do anyways. We kind of like test the waters of how much we can give and take, but I wish I would have paid more attention. But in my mind, I'm like, this is Jared. What a phenomenal guy. What a big change in his life. He's got a beautiful fiance, a beautiful family, just got a new home, just changed careers, has a new job. He has family support. And I just kind of took a bath, and I am angry. Even today, I'm still angry about how I handled that situation. In this next episode, we're going to transition. We're going to talk about actually what happened, and maybe you can kind of help shed a light on what it looks like, the night of the overdose, and I just give you power. I give you energy that I can get out of you what you need, that you can share with the people. I know it's going to be hard, but I do appreciate you coming in. So in the next segment, we'll come right back and we'll talk about that. So thank you. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with The Fix. Welcome back to The Fix. I'm your host, Brock Bevell, and I'm continue to have Heather here with me. And thank you again for coming. I just want to dive right into this. The last segment, we talked about the death of Jared, and my recollection that night, and I'm still, like I said, I'm still frustrated about it. I was awakened by a phone call by one of Jared's brothers who was at the house, and I missed that phone call. Like, to this day, I know I couldn't have done anything about it, but it's heavy. It's heavy on my heart, because Jared, like, we're best friends. I love the guy. We spent a lot of time. But I'm also angry how it happened. Yeah. I look at this, I look at you, I look at Tina, I look at the team that he had, and people loved that guy. And so what I'd like you to do, if you don't mind, I would just like to get into your brain, because the information that you're going to give may help somebody. They may see a sign or symptom that their loved one's going through, and they could say, I need to call EMS, or I need immediate assistance. So if you don't mind, can you tell us, I know the date happened August 2nd, 2017. Mm-hmm. It was at night. Right. It was in Pine Top. Mm-hmm. What more can you tell me?
What happened that night? Okay, we were going to bed about normal time, maybe 9-ish, and which was kind of normal for us, and he did not want to come to bed. So I was like, that's not normal, what's going on? And he's like, oh, I just want to watch TV, but I just felt something really weird. He was acting really different, and I remember trying to watch him, seeing what's going on, and he was just watching TV. So, okay, well, maybe he's just really awake tonight.
When you said he's acting different, tell us, what do you mean?
It's hard to explain. I don't really know. He was just not talking to me very much, and just real standoffish, and just really awake, and not his normal self. I don't know how to explain it. It was just kind of like a separation from he and I, which wasn't normal. So I just had like this gut feeling that something was off. And I ended up just going to sleep. And I woke up, it was about 1 a.m. I woke up to the sound of like shivering, like, you know, and I was like, what is that? So I ran in the living room, and Jared was laying on our couch, and he had a towel wrapped up in him, and he was just shivering like so hard and just soaking wet. The towel was soaking wet, and he was just holding on to it, and I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on? What are you okay? And like he couldn't talk to me. And I remember just saying, did you do drugs? And he said, he just like shook his head, like trying to look at me.
So why did you ask him that question? Why did you feel like it was drugs?
I had just, because he had like a past, you know, drug problem, and I noticed over the few weeks just something different about him. So seeing this, like I'd never obviously seen anything like that before, but that was just the first thing that popped in my head, like, oh my gosh, what if he did something, you know? And you hear about people overdosing if they've been passed and tried again. So that was just the first thing that popped in my head.
Okay.
So I tried asking him, and he said no, and well, tried to say no. And I said, I'm calling 911. And I remember him looking up at me and like shaking his head.
But there were no drugs around?
No.
So it wasn't
there was
immediately
nothing obvious. No.
There wasn't. Okay.
No. His eyes got really big when I said I was calling 911, and he said no. You know, he was shaking still. So I went and grabbed my phone, and I called 911 and told him what was going on, and I said, you know, I woke up, he's shivering, I don't know what's going on with him, and so, you know, they started sending someone out, and I was trying to talk to him. At one point, I remember he switched from one side of the couch to the other, and still just holding on, shivering, he couldn't talk, and she was telling me to ask him if he took anything so they could help him. So, you know, it all happened so fast, but I remember he's laying on the couch and I'm on the phone, and I was like, Jared, I need you to tell me, did you take something, because we want to help you. They need to help you. They need to know. And he couldn't talk, and he just in an instant froze, like he died. His eyes just like froze open. His tongue stuck out a little bit, and I remember his arm was kind of stiff. And I'm on the phone, and it happened so fast. And I remember I was like, no, and I grabbed his arm, and I just remember like, you know, it's kind of stiff to move. And she's like, Heather, they're right outside. So I ran outside because I didn't see them. They were next door. Our driveway was kind of long, so I was yelling for them to come. And they ran in the house, and I pulled him onto the floor and started working on him. But it didn't cross my mind at that point. I thought it happened so fast that I thought, oh, he's gonna be okay, they're gonna save him. You know, whatever's going on with him, it would be okay. And they worked on him. I remember sitting outside just waiting and praying, and I heard one of the EMS, like this stuck in my head, that they were like, oh, there we go. And I was like, they got him, you know, he's okay, he's back. And I went in, and actually what happened was they had been working on trying to get the tube down his throat, but he was so stiff that they couldn't get it down, and they were finally able to get it down to help breathing. So I thought in that moment that they brought him back, but it was just, they finally were able to get a breathing tube in there. But they worked on him for a while, and they couldn't bring him back.
Thank you for sharing that. You said something that made me think. You said there were some red flags that you saw leading up to this event. Mm. Can you tell me about that?
You mean like that night or prior?
How about just a couple, however you want, maybe a couple days, or what were some that they still stick out in your mind, that some red flags that you saw leading up to them?
The main things that I noticed was just the difference in how he acted to me, and not wanting to be home as much, and just felt like he was hiding a lot, mostly a lot on his phone. And actually I remember him getting something in the mail. He got a package in the mail one time, which I didn't really think about at the time, but he hid it. It was, I mean, I don't know. There's just little things like that I was like, what is going on? Like, what does that even mean? Why are you hiding stuff? I just really felt like he was just hiding a lot that just wasn't typical of him. Just spending a lot of time away from me, and he made up a lot of stuff that didn't seem to make sense to me in the 2 weeks prior to his death.
2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Had you ever seen him use drugs?
No.
Was his drinking getting worse?
It was for a while. A few months prior it was, but I noticed the 2 weeks before, I think he was trying to be better, you know. I noticed he was on his Bible app a lot, and he was talking to me like he wanted to get involved in singing in church, in the band. So it's like it was getting pretty bad, but the 2 weeks prior, it's like he was really trying to be better.
Right.
So I think, he just had this struggle of maybe he was already doing drugs and wanting to be this person that he wasn't.
So in the end, you found out it was a methamphetamine.
It wasn't until we got his death certificate back. So when he died, they left him on the floor in my living room because technically he had died before they got there. So he was left on the floor in my living room for well over an hour.
Waiting for the medical examiner?
Waiting for the examiner to get there, and they had searched the house and everything. But when the examiner finally got there, he showed me all over Jared's skin. There was the little spots, blood spots, and he thought, well, maybe it looks like his heart exploded, and maybe he had a heart attack.
So it was very similar to a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So I kind of almost had hope, maybe he was so stressed, and who knows what was going on, that maybe he just had a heart attack. So I felt bad that I was so mad at him during that time, because if he had a heart attack, there's nothing we could have done.
I can't be mad at him.
Right. Yeah, I can't be mad if he had a heart attack.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until his death certificate came back and it said it was.
Did it shock you?
It was no.
Not really, because you'd already seen the changes?
Yeah, I had a feeling something was weird.
So when I read the death certificate, it was methamphetamine toxicity, right? And what's interesting in our line of work, we see overdoses. We hear family members telling us about overdoses. I had never in 5 years. This is the only one that I've actually been involved with. And so you hear about heroin, where you have to use the drugs to help them come out of it. But with methamphetamines, it's not the same. And so I did some research, because I wanted to see what it was, and some of the signs, symptoms would be organ failure. So like you said, his heart would just be too much; it would explode. Another one was chest pain, hyperact or hypothermia. And so when you said he was cold, and this is something maybe the community could get behind if they see this, if a loved one is cold, frigid, and it's just abnormal. Because from the time he was talking to you to the time where he got really cold, what was the time frame?
Oh, I think I don't really know, no, because by the time I saw him, found him on the couch like that, he was already in that state. Because I was asleep, so I honestly don't know how long.
So a few hours
started. Yeah, maybe. I'm not really sure the time frame of what he was going through prior to when I actually.
But it wasn't like 24 hours. He had the flu. He was sick. This happened like.
Oh, it happened pretty shortly. Yeah, I went to bed 9:30, maybe 10 at the latest, and 1 o'clock I woke up. And so he was completely fine when I went to bed, and 1 o'clock he was.
Tell me how your kids handled it, because you had young kids in the home.
Yeah, I think that was the hardest part. My 2 oldest kids were in the home. We had a loft upstairs, and my daughter slept up there, and she was awake. I don't know how much she heard, but she heard Jared trying to call out for me. And I remember her running down and seeing him, and she's like, "Mom, what's going on?" And I just told her, "Just go in the room with your brother." So that was really tough, having to have them be in the room, and after Jared died, having to go and tell them, I'll never forget the looks on their faces, and having to make them stay in there. And that was the first day of my son's, he started 7th grade the morning that Jared died, and he was trying to be strong, and he went to school, but he didn't do good in school that year. And my daughter, after she heard him, so she had a tough time. So I had a lot of regret, just having them in the home.
How are you coping with the death today? It's been a couple years.
It has been a couple years. I don't talk about it too much. I have a lot of faith about what happened, and that he's okay and where he is now. So I think a lot of it is faith-based of how I can deal with it. And I know, even though he went through that, he loves God, but it's tough nowadays. My kids, I think it's really good for them. We take it as a blessing that they got to see something like that. They're like, we will never do drugs.
Yes.
So that's a plus, because people try to say you could do drugs and be okay, and you hear those people that are okay, they're alive, but they saw it firsthand that it will kill you. And so that's something that they share with their friends, that they saw it.
Thank you. I know that's super hard. super emotional for you, but if there's one thing that you could share with this community for wives, husbands, people that are going through that, they have a family member that is in active addiction, what advice would you give them?
I think the best advice that I would give is definitely be supportive and ask the questions. If you have someone that was a previous and you're with them and you start noticing little signs, don't blow it off that you're crazy. Don't be afraid to talk to them about it, or, you know, I wish I would have called you or whoever, and just don't be afraid to question them and try to help them. Because I didn't, and I believed him when things seemed weird, and I couldn't help him. So I wish that I would have not believed him, and when things seemed weird, really pushed it. But I didn't know. I didn't believe that he would do it.
I can tell that we still love Jared, and we hope that, I know that we're all still grieving a little bit. I just hope that this message today gets out there to people, that they can hear it, they can feel it, that's palpable to them, that addiction is real, and sometimes it doesn't work.
Right.
And we have to get involved, and it has a lasting effect on all of us.
Yeah.
So again, thank you for your time. Thank you for watching The Fix. I'm Brock Bevell. If you know someone who is struggling or affected by addiction, there's hope. There's always hope out there. Please don't give up. You're important and your life matters. Thank you for watching. We will see you next time.